onto the fuselage build, just over the top of the plan, lay all the strips and just glue together. So simple butt joins everywhere, just cut it carefully to length, and I'm using PVA glue. I haven't finished the tail to length exactly because I'll trim that off when I'm putting the two sides together. And the other interesting thing to note is that down at this end, this here, it isn't joined, so this piece here is not joined to this in any way. Now there's obviously a former to go here, so this one here, and at this point the fuselage actually does quite a significant bend in towards the nose. You can see it on the plan here. So at that point it's a sharp bend, and then this bit is straight. So the logic is obviously that you don't have it joined at this point, because there's no way that you could bend this timber to the correct angle. And what I'm going to do with this one is I'm actually going to put a notch in the wood there, so that I can actually get it to do a nice sharp bend, because the front needs to be straight. So I can't have a gradual bend here. It needs to be straight, because there are going to be panels put into here, and they obviously won't bend. So progressing, the next step is to put the polythene over the top like this, and then build the second half. So, and then when I've done that, I'll put the fuselage rig on the table, and we'll have a look and see how it's all going to fit together. Okay, I finished the second side, and then on the table I glued in these three formers to one of the sides, and then once that was dry, put the glue onto the other side and dropped this side onto that side, and then before it was completely dry I put it into this rig to make sure that everything was perfectly level, and make sure that the back here was level as well. Okay, here's the fuselage almost done. So you can see at the back I've put in some fillets in here, and a balsa piece at the back. Got to figure out the way of doing the tail wheel here at a later time. Right, here's the fuselage progressing. So I've put in this piece here for the horizontal surface to sit on, and I've just got to fill in these pieces here. So at the front here we've got the hatch. So to make this, I cut out the base piece to fit into the gap, and then the two end pieces, you can see that I've just set them into the ends. So I've trimmed the base to fit around this piece and this piece, and just put this piece across here. So that fits in very nicely now. So all I have to do is just trim these two edges, and then put a piece of balsa across the top, and I'll just have to figure out a way of keeping that in place. Probably use some magnets to keep that in place. And then the next job is to sheet all of this up, so I'll come back to that when I've made some progress. I've also been thinking about the servo arrangement. I'm going to try using micro servos. I know they seem quite small for the size of the plane, but they're quite powerful, and I think they'll be okay. If they're not, I'll just swap them out. So I've got two servos here. The middle one is going to be the rudder, which is going to operate on a loop system, and then this one here is the elevator. So I've mounted them on a bit of ply, and I'm going to mount it just here, like this former. And the reason for putting them here is because this is where the cockpit is, just here. So this can be open so that I can actually gain access to the servo arms here. Here's the tail inlays put in at the back, and the servo tray here. Here we are fitting the formers on the top of the fuselage. And on the hatch cover at the front, I've just decided to put in a couple of stringers either side, just to provide a little strength to the sheeting that go over the top there. So, I'll show you when it's done. Here the formers in place, and the stringers just positioned, they're not glued yet. And these have to be cut out, so it's a 1/16 sheet and 3/16 width. So just cutting those out, and then I'll glue them in place. So there we are, all the stringers in place. What I did was I just tacked them with super glue, and then I just went round and put drops of PVA like here and here, where the stringers weren't quite attached to the formers. So I just have to trim them off to the correct length, and that part of the job will be done. And here's the finished cowl. Okay, I'm going to stop the build of the fuselage at this stage. There's still a fair amount to do. I've got to make up the nose cone, which is going to be a removable balsa piece to go at the front to go over the motor. I've got to finish the bottom. I've got to put in the mounts for the undercarriage. I'm not too sure how they work. And I've got to put in the mounts for the wing struts, and again I'm not too sure how they work. So I want to make the wing and the undercarriage before I finish it off. And the other question, which maybe somebody can help me with it, is the angle of the horizontal surface back here. The way it sits on the fuselage is, I think it's got a very slight downward angle, because the front is less deep than the back. And on the drawing it seems to show that it should be perfectly level, and the underside of the surface, there's a gap between it and the stringer here, which isn't reflected by the actual construction, or at least my construction, which has a flat bottom to the tailplane. So I've got a feeling that it should either be perfectly level like this, or have a slight upward tilt on it. So perhaps somebody could help me out with that. But I'm going to go on and make the wing now, so I'll show progress with that as it evolves.